What is going on YouTube, and welcome to another video. And in this one we are going to be prepping my exhaust headers before installing them. There are a few things that you want to do anytime you're installing aftermarket headers on your car. Firstly, you want to seal it somehow from rust, so we are going to be spraying it in a protective high temperature coating to prevent it from rusting over. We are then going to be wrapping it in a protective heat wrap. This heat wrap helps keep in all of the excess heat that comes from the exhaust headers. Your exhaust headers are one of the hardest parts of the car. You want to make sure you keep that heat in. You don't want it to escape into the engine bay where your intakes can end up sucking that air back in. This can end up reducing your car's performance. You also want to make sure that heat doesn't get to any of the surrounding wires or things that it could potentially damage. So the heat wrap is going to help with that. And then lastly, we are going to be sealing the exhaust header wrap with a silicone high temperature coating. This will prevent dust and dirt and things from getting into the wrap. It'll also act as a sort of glue to kind of hold all the threads and fibers together to prevent it from unraveling. Now I've already gone ahead and done the first step, which is to spray the entire exhaust header in a high temperature flame-proof paint. I ended up using the VHT brand paint, which is specifically made for exhaust headers. You can find this stuff at pretty much any of your local auto parts store. You want to get complete coverage over the entire exhaust header because it helps seal the header in and helps prevent corrosion. This is especially important if you live somewhere where the climate is a lot more humid, and it was especially important back in the day when long tube headers were typically made out of cast iron or simply just a regular steel. But most headers nowadays are made out of more sophisticated metals such as stainless steel, which are a little less prone to rust, but it's still important to make sure you get it sealed completely. That way your exhaust headers don't rust over in the future. It helps extend the longevity of your part. I started with a couple of light dry coats and then followed with a couple of thicker wet coats, as you would with pretty much any sort of paint spray that you would ever use. Got even coverage over the entire exhaust header just to make sure that everything was covered. And now it's time to go ahead and wrap the exhaust headers in a heat wrap that will help keep the heat inside of the headers and away from the other components in the engine. So before you start wrapping, you want to come up with some sort of plan on how exactly all the wrap is going to work together. Typically the way it works is you're going to wrap all but one of these pipes, and then you're going to have one long wrap that comes up the entire length of the header, and then you're going to continue that onto the last pipe, whichever you end up choosing. So for that, you kind of want to find, I would say probably looking at this, it could be tricky. This is a bit different from the other one, but let's see here. So having looked at this pipe for a little while now, I can see if y'all look closely there, I'm not really going to be able to fit any of the wrap into the space. So these two headers right here are going to have to get wrapped together all the way up till this point. So one of these two is going to end up being the last one to get wrapped along with the rest of the header.
Alright, let me try and explain in voiceover because I attempted to film this in POV and basically caught nothing on camera, and I was out of frame on the mirrorless camera as well. Basically, it's important to plan out how you want to route your wrap. The idea is that you're going to start off by wrapping all of your primary tubes except for one. So in my case, where I have 3 primary tubes, I'm going to wrap 2 of them as far down as I can go. And then I'm going to start down at the collector where the primary tubes meet, and in one long piece of wrap I'm going to cover the rest of the header, all the way back up to the last remaining primary tube. This gives kind of the cleanest look for the wrap. Selecting which tube you want to end on is where the strategy comes in. I started off by looking at how far from the flange I could wrap each of the primary tubes. As I pointed out earlier, the space here can be a little bit tight between some of the tubes. Here's how far I could pre-wrap each of the tubes, and because of the close fit of the 2 tubes on the right, a lot of the pipe is left exposed. So my plan was to wrap all the way up to the first pipe on the left, then carry over to the other 2 and continue wrapping them as a pair. At this point it'd be a toss-up between which tube I wanted to end on. I ended up selecting the middle pipe, which means that I need to pre-wrap both the left and the right side.
So I'll go ahead and wrap this one first. So I wrap it all the way around the length of this pipe here. Kind of get an idea of how long it is. Something like that. And then it's going to be roughly 2, 3, about 4 full lengths. And then on top of that I'm going to throw in another maybe almost a foot. Just to make sure we have extra. Don't want to come up short. Alright, so for this end, since I don't have a whole lot of fraying going on here, I'm going to go ahead and just fold that side in. Really going to crease the top here to try and keep it folded. The idea here is we want to prevent any fraying from kicking up. from this wrap. I'm going to try and get it tucked in there as tight as possible. And then we're going to start feeding it over. The idea is you want to try and get about maybe a 1/4 inch of or not a 1/4 inch, maybe like a 1/2 inch of overlap, something like that. You want to make sure you're pulling this tight too. You don't want to leave it loose. If you pull it tight, it's going to look cleaner. It's also going to have less chance of coming apart on you when you put it on. You can see it's already forming. Like, you're going to run into this a lot. There's a horizontal, or there's a thread that will go horizontally back and forth, and it really likes to come undone really easily. It's just annoying to deal with. All right. So, I'm kind of coming up on the last piece of it here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to snip off this frayed edge. Okay, I'm going to try and fold that over. Lay that in place. And then I am temporarily, note that I said temporarily, holding it with zip ties. That way I can go back later and get them properly secured with some of the metal ties that I'll have.
That's pretty much all there is to wrapping these headers. The 3 important things to remember are about 1/2 inch in overlap between passes, pull the wrap tight against the pipe, and be sure to fold over the edges and trim them. Maintaining a 1/2 inch of overlap between passes is important because it means that you'll get full coverage of the headers, but without having so much overlap that you're going to trap too much heat into the pipe. Pulling the wrap tight against the exhaust will not only make it look cleaner, but it also helps prevent your wrap from unraveling, and then it's important to trim and fold the edges over to help prevent fraying on the edges from starting up. With 2 of the lead pipes pre-wrapped, I then went to measure out the length of the wrap that I would need to wrap the rest of the header. You want to be generous in your estimates here because you don't want to come up short and end up having to add additional wrap with another tie, because it's just not going to look as clean. I start out at the base of the header where the collector starts, and wrapped back up the length of the header. I found that with the amount of wrap that I was dealing with, it was easier to just spin the header to help pull the wrap around it instead of just trying to run the wrap around the pipe. Again, make sure to pull the wrap tight here just to keep it looking clean. Once I got to the lead pipes, I was able to then split the wrap off and just continue on 2 of the lead pipes, and then eventually ended on the last tube in the middle. With the wrap applied, we need to tie down the ends of the wrap so that it doesn't come loose. Metal ties were provided by the manufacturer, however I was never able to really get these to work even with the special tool that's recommended to help tighten them down. The manufacturer themselves actually recommend that you find hose clamps instead of using these, so that's exactly what I did. If you didn't already know, hose clamps can be loosened all the way so that they become disconnected. This makes it a lot easier to install them where you need them. I used a large hose clamp for the collector end, and then I used 3 smaller ones for the lead pipes. It's important to orient the hose clamp so that the fastener doesn't block any of the mounting holes, otherwise it may be difficult when you go to install the bolts later. With the wrap secured, the last step you'll want to take is to seal the wrap with a high temperature silicone coating. This coating serves 2 purposes. It acts almost like an adhesive to help maintain the condition of the wrap and help prevent it from unraveling, and it also keeps dirt and grime from getting into the wrap, which can eventually damage it over time. This coating only needs to be applied to the wrap portion of the headers. It'll become dry to the touch within a couple of hours, but it won't fully cure until the headers are installed on the car and they get up to temperature. One thing to keep in mind that I didn't mention earlier, it's probably best to tape off the ports for the O2 sensors for a couple of reasons. You want to avoid getting paint on the threads so that the sensors can screw into place smoothly, and you also want to avoid getting any paint inside the headers where it could possibly get kicked up later and foul up the O2 sensors.
So that covers how to wrap and seal your exhaust headers. Very important step to help keep the heat out of the engine bay, as well as to protect your long tube headers and make sure they last as long as possible. In the next video, I'll be showing you guys how to actually install the long tube headers. It's currently Wednesday now. This video should be going up in a couple of days, and then I should be doing the install over the weekend. So you'll probably see that video pop up here in probably about a week or so. So stay tuned for that. Afterwards, I'll be installing a fuel pump. That's the last supporting mod I need for the supercharger install. And then the supercharger itself, I should start receiving parts towards the end of March, hopefully, or middle of March. I've already been talking with Aaron from Top Guns and some of the options that I want to pick out for it.
So hopefully I'll be receiving parts pretty soon. Super excited for that. If you guys want to follow along with my supercharger build, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to be doing a complete DIY on it so you guys can learn how to install a similar kit yourself. I'll be showing the horsepower numbers that I make. I'll be doing a full review and everything. Really exciting build, so make sure you guys subscribe below if you want to follow along. I apologize for the delays in getting videos out. In fact, I don't think I uploaded anything during the whole month of February. I've pretty much been sick and completely busy with work, but hopefully the videos are going to start coming back normally again. If you're not already a follower on Instagram, make sure you give me a follow there. I try and update stuff more regularly on Instagram, so if you guys want more up-to-date information on how the supercharger build and everything is going, you can give me a follow there. Thank you guys once again for watching. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you all in the next video. Later.